Hello, my name is Jonathan Schaeffer. I'm a professor in the Department of Computing Science at the University of Alberta, and I'm delighted to be speaking to you today. For those of you who don't know where Edmonton is, we're in the western part of North America, in Canada. What's interesting is that Edmonton is the closest major North American city to Seoul. As you can see on the right-hand side, Edmonton in the summer is a beautiful city, and 3 hours away by car are the majestic Canadian Rocky Mountains. You can't talk about issues to do with artificial intelligence without first prefacing it with the amazing potential that this technology has. Because AI is going to revolutionize society. If it's deployed correctly, it will improve our quality of life, and it will advance our scientific and cultural ambitions. The only limitation to the technology that we know of so far is what we can dream, what we can imagine. But like all technology, the potential for good comes with an element of risk. The risks of AI are well known. We don't need to go into them. And they're well understood, but they are challenging to deal with. There are numerous national agendas to do with AI. Everyone around the world understands what the potential for this technology is. And many countries are positioning themselves for the future to be leaders in this space. For example, the US, quote, wants to ensure continued US leadership in AI research and development, unquote. China has stated the goal of being the global leader in AI by 2030. And in the last decade, they've made impressive strides forward. And Russia says that, quote, whoever becomes the leader in AI will become the ruler of the world, unquote. Scary words. And AI is being deployed throughout the world in public and, unfortunately, not so public ways to advance national interests. As you can see in this chart, beginning in 2017, many countries have announced national AI agendas. I'm proud to say that Canada was the first in 2017 with our Pan-Canadian AI strategy, which was largely an investment in academic AI research. South Korea was one of the first countries to come forward with a strategy, and theirs was unique at the time for its focus on research and development. Many of these strategies are all about developing the commercial potential for AI without necessarily properly addressing the economic, societal, ethical, and legal challenges that this technology poses. So in this talk, I'd like to give you my perspectives. Peter McKinnon, a Canadian researcher, writes, quote, there are significant risks that must be managed through a combination of technical design and policy-making instruments in order to maximize AI's benefits for any given society while protecting its ethical and social values, unquote. So in this talk, I'd like to talk about 5 suggestions of where we are going and what has to be done. These are personal opinions. They don't cover the full range of issues that need to be addressed to do with AI, but all of these matters are actionable today. And despite that, most jurisdictions, most countries are not yet to the point where they can start taking action. The first has to do with ethics standards. And if you just Google them, you'll be quite impressed at the dozens of ethics standards that have been proposed. And if you look at them, there's a lot of commonality. We can all agree on almost all of the principles in these standards. The problem is these documents are great, but they're only documents. They haven't been turned into an implementation. And that's what's missing. We need to start moving forward on implementing these ethical standards. One of the early ethical standards was done in 2017 at the Beneficial AI Conference held in Asilomar. This is a picture of the attendees of that conference, and the reason I point it out is because for the quality of the people who were there and the quantity of people, the end result was an impressive document, and it's one that I look to often when I think about AI and ethics. Here's Peter McKinnon again talking about ethics, and he says, quote, AI is not moving in a single ethical direction. Like many technologies, it is being pursued by diverse groups of players of all description, including non-state actors such as criminal gangs and terrorist groups, each anticipating positive outcomes in using AI to achieve their perceived goals, unquote. And all you have to do is think about this in the same context as, say, nuclear technology, where there are many benefits to nuclear technology, and there are also huge potential risks. And as we've clearly seen, there are different groups who view this technology in different ways and move it forward with different agendas, trying to achieve their goals. And the real question is, with these ethical standards, when do we start implementing them, not just on a national scale, but on a global scale? There are many issues that AI poses to society, but in many cases, there is an easy solution to addressing or reducing the angst that many people might have about how AI will impact their lives. And this can be achieved by not letting AI make the final decision. Have AI collaborate with humans. Have AI be the role of an apprentice or an advisor. We can use AI to enhance or augment the human who makes the final decision. And I'm sure you all are familiar with this as augmented intelligence. Let's not have the AI be the doctor who prescribes what's wrong with you. Instead, have the AI advise a human doctor who takes the input of the AI, uses it as advisement, and then, based on their experience, makes the final decision. Keeping the human in the loop reduces much of the concerns that people will have over AI being in perceived control. This is a diagram from a wonderful book called Human Plus Machine by Doherty and Wilson, and it shows a spectrum of AI capabilities where on the right-hand side there are activities that are uninteresting, boring, and repetitive, and are well suited for machines only. On the left-hand side are activities that, quite frankly, we don't know how to do well with technology yet. And they're human-only activities, at least today. But in the middle, we have a wide range of activities where humans and AI can work together to achieve something greater than either could achieve on its own. If you need to do some repetitive task, let the machine do it. If you need important judgment, like a judge and jury, it's in the human domain. But in this large middle area, let the humans and the computers work together in a symbiotic way where the AI can enhance and improve the human decision-making abilities. This is critically important because AI as it exists today is largely dependent upon humans, and humans are fallible. If you take a look at this diagram representing machine learning, humans are involved in every step of the way, from collecting the data, to cleaning it and processing it, to giving input and feedback and defining the questions that we want answered, to designing the algorithms and choosing the parameters that are going to be used by the machine learning algorithm, to look at the predictions and decide whether they're actionable or appropriate. At every step of the way, humans are involved. And we have not made a lot of progress at automating as much of this as we perhaps might like to. And that's why it's critical to keep humans in the loop to understand what's going on and help correct potential problems. And this can be achieved in another way through auditing. Consumers need assurances that the AI products that they are using have integrity, are correct, are free from bias. And therefore, these products should be audited and approved by some sort of regulatory, potentially regulatory body. And the depth of these audits and the breadth of these audits is quite daunting because it's the algorithms, it's the data, it's the processes used to design and build these products, and how they're deployed, all of which need to be reviewed to ensure that problems, biases, deficiencies don't get introduced. And then the question becomes, who validates whether our AI products are performing in an ethical, legal, safe way? Is it the government? Is it industry? Is it voluntary? There are people who have widely differing opinions as to how this should happen. University of Toronto professor Parham Arabi has been working in AI for several decades, and he's been building a system to try and help automate much of the audit process for machine learning algorithms. And he's worked on 20 different AI systems, and based on his experience, he concludes, quote, almost every AI system we tested has some sort of significant bias. It is very important that when we use AI systems, or when governments use AI systems, that there be rules in place that they need to make sure that they are fair and validated to be fair. I think slowly governments are waking up to that reality, unquote. He's built a tool called HALT. It's available online, and I love his vision. Quote, every AI has a weakness. Our mission is to find it. As a different way of trying to validate the correctness of these AI systems, Twitter announced in July, quote, industry's first algorithmic bias bounty competition, unquote. They had some bias problems with imaging software. They thought they fixed it internally. They decided to put out a challenge to the community, let crowdsourcing try and figure out whether they had fully addressed their bias problems. Well, a few weeks ago, the results came in, and, well, bias was found. But still, it's a novel way of industry trying to get public support for identifying and resolving bias issues. There is too much information and misinformation about AI in the literature, and there's lots of blame for this misinformation. The scientific community is guilty. We've made too many optimistic predictions. Industry claims about exaggerated capabilities. Media has hyped AI to the point where it's actually detrimental to our field. And of course, there are people out there who are just afraid of new technology and what it might do. And it's critical, it's urgent, in fact, that we educate everyone about what AI is and it is not what AI is not, and the challenges posed by this new technology. And that means the public, government, and industry. Everyone needs to understand this game-changing technology. And as a first step towards education, all computer science programs should include education on the ethics of AI, or ethics in general. And I'm sad to report that we don't even have that in Canada yet. It just seems to be mandatory that this would be a good first step. Lastly, there's only so far you can take many of the issues that AI poses when you're talking about local and national initiatives, because AI is a global problem. To solve it locally is nice, but we need to solve it around the world. The European Union has taken some bold steps forward. I'm sure you're all familiar with GDPR and the AI draft standard, but we need more. This means a global mindset change. We need to switch from thinking about AI as a reactive technology, something where a problem occurs and we now have to fix it, to being proactive, understand what the problems will be tomorrow and address them today so that they aren't problems. That means international leadership, not just national, but international. Why not South Korea? Why not have the people who are attending this conference take the lead at bringing the world together to tackle the challenges of AI? So, in conclusion, AI will change the world. We can all agree. We may not agree as to how profound that impact will be, but in my opinion, it will be deeply profound. And if it's done correctly, will help improve the quality of life for everyone. And so we need to address the problems before they become problems. Look at them today when they're small problems and solve them, instead of tomorrow when the problems will be bigger and perhaps unmanageable. And that means we as a community need to be proactive and not reactive. Thank you very much. I've included several references for some of the graphics and the material in this talk, and I hope that you have a wonderful meeting and that this talk in some small way helps inspire further further discussions. Thank you very much. Good night.